Good afternoon, it's Cassidy from Tactile Technology, and again we're in the hot seat. This time we've got Manjinder Kang, or Manny, we're going to call him as we go through, but it's his Sunday name is Manjinder. I'm doing well already. We've only been going a few seconds, but we'll get Manny involved. How are you, Manny?
Hey there, how's it going, Lee? It's really great to have this opportunity to talk to you all today. So really looking forward to it.
Good. So what we'll always start with is just a bit of background. So where did you grow up? Tell us about your parents, what they did for a living, a little bit about your education and what you plan to do with your life when you were young.
Sure, no problem. So I was born, bred, and I'm still in Birmingham, in the United Kingdom. My parents, my dad, he's worked in various jobs in terms of logistics and distribution and stuff like that, supply chain for textile companies and things like that. He currently still works in logistics in a major haulage division for key clients in healthcare. My mum, she worked a bit in retail. And she's now retired from that. So that's my parental sort of their background. My mum was born in India, and my dad is first generation Indian, so he was born in the UK, and they got married in the traditional way that things were back then. So when I was a child, I wanted to be an actor, but the confidence kind of got knocked out of me. You know how it is; it can be difficult growing up.
So far from what I would choose to do.
Yeah, but I mean, it's one of those things where you kind of, as you're growing up, you just kind of slowly it eats away at you that you're not really going to get there. But it was, I guess in hindsight, it's fine. It's all right. I've kind of moved on from it.
So did you do anything to kick that off? Did you do any, theatrical training or anything, or did you just do, amateur dramatics and those kind of things?
Yeah, so I was pretty sort of involved in the amateur dramatic sort of stuff at school, and I really, really enjoyed it. But this is coming from someone who is certified introvert. I really would say on the spectrum, because I think people believe that it's a spectrum now. I'm like literally 81% introvert. I'm pretty high on there, but there are actors and actresses out there that are very introverted, and they just put themselves in that persona. So I really, really respect them in terms of the profession that they're in and their ability to be able to do that.
I did a lot, at school in the theatrical side, but I was behind the scenes. I used to do set building, set design. I used to do all the lighting and those kind of props. That was my bag. I enjoyed doing that. I wouldn't want to be actually on the stage doing nothing at all.
Yeah, because I mean, if it goes horribly wrong, I mean, where are you going to go?
In fact, I should say I did do one thing. So we did one where I can't remember the name of the play now, and it had like a very large wheelchair thing for somebody who was supposedly disabled. It was like a science fiction-y type thing, and I was the power for the wheelchair. I was inside it, wheeling it along from inside and turning lights on and things. It had lights at the front that you could blink as if they were like eyes. So I was moving that. But on our, I think it was our second night, we had a puncture. So I was trying to get off the stage, and as I rotated the wheels, one was turning, the other one was just slipping, and I was going round in a circle. So they had to wheel me off at that point. That was the only time I've ever been on the stage where there were actually people watching, and it was inside something, so no one saw me.
I think you get some sort of sense of security with that as well. But yeah, I guess
definitely,
if you read that as a sign, Lee, to maybe kind of focus attentions elsewhere. That's sometimes you've got to read them.
So it didn't go quite that way. You made a decision. So what was your next choice then, and did you end up in that area?
So it's really, really interesting. I mean, a lot of people will probably sympathize with this. When you get to that stage when you really need to make these key decisions in your life, and you're not really sure at all, and you're just confused, and you don't really know which direction to go down. I was one of those individuals as well. So I was looking at the path of university. Is that the right thing to do? Is it maybe something else? I did go to university, but I picked a very general sort of subject to kind of vest my interest in. I did my undergraduate in psychology at Aston University because it's got a lot of general.
I'm an industrial fellow at Aston University at the moment.
Wow.
A
well, they're
visiting
not,
industrial fellow means I only get 3 years. So
but they're not that kind of easy to achieve or get. So it's, I mean, kudos to you for being able to kind of pull that off for sure and have that.
well, I
Wow.
get used to the library, which is quite useful.
Yeah, it's pretty extensive. I spent a lot of time in there researching and stuff because psychology is very heavily research based. I think that was one of the reasons that it was quite attractive in the sense that, you know, strong report writing, strong analytical skills. Those were the kind of things I was going to get out there.
Yeah.
But as I was in that kind of arena, I started to really develop a massive passion for sport. Um, really, because again, I'm not a very sporty individual. I'm
Any
actually
particular sports, or was it general, all sports?
so I'm a massive. A lot of people will. Some people will know this if they're familiar with me and they're watching now. They will know that I'm a huge Olympics fan,
Yeah.
massive Olympics fan. But I'm actually not that much interested in athletics. This is going to actually seem
Well, yeah,
really
but
funny,
saying that, the Olympics covers so many different sports, doesn't it?
which is my point as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, it's a massive range, isn't it?
Mm.
I think there's surfing now involved incorporated. Yeah,
Sport
it's
climbing,
all
yeah.
sorts of things have been added in over the years.
Mm.
It's not one area. It's quite diverse, isn't it?
For sure, and I mean it's growing. I mean they're looking at potentially in the gymnastic sort of arena, looking at. I don't know if you know what parkour is or free running.
Yes, yeah, where
Yeah,
they jump over obstacles and things like that. Yeah,
in a city environment, so they're looking
yeah,
to bring that in hopefully, which I think will be hugely exciting.
yeah.
They need to evolve and they need to innovate because they need to continue to attract younger audiences. But yeah, Olympic sport, although in particular, I mean, I have passions for. I mean, I love tennis and I love rugby. So those are the two sort
Well,
of mainstream sports
rugby's
I
good
really.
because we've got it this weekend. We've got a good start for the Six Nations, haven't we? So we've got, I think it's in the evening, isn't it? So we've got England. No, so Sunday, isn't it? No, it's Saturday. So Saturday evening, we've got England, England, Scotland. I think, isn't it?
So it'll be interesting to kind of see where
Yeah,
that goes in this in this season for sure. It'd be nice to obviously see it played properly in full as well. But let's not talk about the C word or the P word. I think everybody knows which ones I
yeah.
actually mean.
Yes, definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. I'm going to say
Um,
it made some quite disruption to the Six Nations, 2 years ago, doesn't it? We got halfway through, and then it just ended at that point in time, and then they tried to recover a bit later. But hopefully this time it'll be a really good competition. I think is it France that actually got the odds on at the moment because they're playing so well at the moment. So that should be quite interesting. I think England Ireland, no, sorry, France Ireland this weekend, isn't it as well? That'll be interesting. Two solid sides.
you never know with the French team which one's going to turn up though,
Yes, that's
and
true.
they
Very
are
true.
their own. I think they will admit that they are their own
Yeah.
worst enemy.
They're not quite the All Blacks where they're always playing at 100% all the time. It can vary, can't it?
Very much so.
Yes.
But
So how
yeah.
did this love of sport then develop into some kind of working role?
Well, it kind of it did, but it didn't in the way that I intended. While I was at university studying psychology, I thought to myself, sports psychology, why not? But of course, it didn't really end up that way because if people are looking at my LinkedIn profile, they'll know I'm not a sports psychologist. Although I'm I still dabble in the amateur side of things. I don't go around telling myself I'm that, but I really like the ethics around it, and I really like the
Yeah.
thought process and the models. And I actually apply them in my daily life. I try to take them and apply them in daily life. Things like self-talk, which a lot of sports people do, and rehearsing their performances so that they're kind of more comfortable with that, those kind of things. So I'm
So did
still
you rehearse this before we started then earlier today?
this one I wanted to kind of sort of wing because sometimes life it's what's the point of living if you don't feel alive, I
That's
suppose.
true. That's true.
Yeah. Yeah. I was looking at the availability of courses in sports psychology and that kind of stuff. Really expensive and not much out when I was in university, and it was a real bottleneck. There weren't very many opportunities, so it was relatively still new. It's a bit more mainstream now, but I still think sports clubs are not tapping into the potential. And the new wave with sports psychology, just keeping a sort of amateur eye on things, is that it has super relevance in terms of performance in a business setting and in a corporate setting, because it's hugely transferable. So I think there's growth potential just because you're someone who's trained that way. You can take your learnings and you can take your research and apply it in a corporate setting. So anybody who's out there is looking at that field, maybe actually think outside the box with it. That's probably a good thing to kind of take on board. Anyway, I'm waffling on there. I ended up working in sport because I did a master's in management, because the job market was particularly sluggish for people coming out of university at that point. So I thought I'll study for another 15 months. I did again another general course at management masters, which was really, really interesting. And really, with the business context, it was really interesting to be involved in that. Yeah. And then I secured this role with UK Athletics, working in sport, as a development coordinator, which soon moved on into the marketing communications team. I ended up spending, it's a big era of my life with so many fond memories of working with some absolutely fantastic people. One of them helped to set up this call.
We can see her in the corner in the green room, who's in the background managing things, can't we?
So, hats off to Rachel. Wonderful times working with her on events, which were incredibly, challenging environments to be involved in. I mean, they were televised on the BBC. In my latter years, we were delivering them in the Olympic Stadium and on Horse Guards Parade, where we built stuff from scratch to be able to host it. So these were big, challenging projects to be involved in. We were an award-winning team as well. We won, event management awards for the stuff that we were involved in. But I was conscious that in a small organisation like UK Athletics, there was only so far I was going to be able to go. There was huge competition for higher roles and to push and progress, and the potential for growth wasn't going to be there anymore. And I had to say goodbye to working within that environment. It was difficult to get over it and to let it go, because it kind of, I'm going to quote the musical Hamilton here. There were a million things that I hadn't done. That's what I felt like. But conversely, I think you can say it in two different ways and mean two different things. There were a million things that I hadn't done. Okay, that's a bit of a downer, but also there are a million things that I hadn't done, so I can still do them. There are a million.
It's an opportunity, isn't it? To go off and do other things.
Yeah, for sure. And I grew as a communications manager at Kia, totally different sector, totally different opportunities. So Kia was house builders. They worked in, obviously it's construction, so completely different sector. But it proved to me that I'm not someone you can really pigeonhole into something. That I'm adaptable, I'm flexible, I can take on a challenge and be in a different space, and deliver really quality sort of service to people. I can grow because it was a managerial position. I'm able to manage my own work program and manage matrix teams. So it was fun being in a different sector. I had to
move on. What were you specifically doing at Kia then?
So so I worked as a communications manager. So that would be internal, external sort of communications, in terms of press releases, promotion of our initiatives, things like that, a bit of PR, but also worked in the bid management space. So helped to secure opportunities for the house builder in terms of packages of land, and working with the team there to create developments and to obviously get people to endorse the fact that, okay, then we're going to go with this particular bidding partner for this package of land because their housing development delivers, I don't know, a really, really enticing community and regeneration scheme, along with, beautiful houses and stuff like that. And they've maximized the use of space, for example.
I think things are quite different, aren't they, in the building game now? It's not just about how quick or how cheaply you can build a property, or not the quality of the work. It's actually all those things outside of it now. A lot of your green credentials, how sustainable things are. There's lots of other things that are really important now, aren't they, when in the construction industry?
You're spot on with that, Lee. I think a lot of really forward-thinking governments as well are thinking that way as well. They kind of they want to really, really weave in the accessibility of green spaces for a holistic experience for residents. You know, it being
Yeah.
about, you know, you're living your life here at the end of the day, so you want good connectivity, good accessibility. You don't want people relying on private transport, and you want them to be able to have good access to you know, sustainable green space in, especially in urban environments, which I mean, it's a big mega trend for where society globally finds itself. You know, digitalization, huge urbanization. I mean, the huge migration of people to cities away from countries, and obviously the other one is climate change. The other big C that's really, really quite, you know, troubling, and stuff that we all have, you know, a vested interest in.
Yeah, well,
You-
we've seen
yeah.
some changes recently with the government dictating that all new houses need to have EV charging capabilities, because as we go forward, we move into that era where all cars are electric. We need to have the infrastructure to be able to support it. So at home and at the workplace, having the ability to charge the vehicles, and also commercial vehicles and things like that. We're going to have to build more infrastructure for those as they become adopted in as electric vehicles as well. So yeah, it's quite interesting, isn't it, how things are going to change.
For
And
sure.
we're working on a project with one of the big heating companies, BDR Thermia and Baxi, and they're looking at the challenges they've got to get to a point where they're not using any combustibles for generating heat, and they're looking at heat as a service and how they can deliver that, and then using alternative mechanisms such as heat pumps, well that's ground or air-based heat pumps and things, even communal systems potentially, to provide heating for a large number of people, down a street or in a block of flats or whatever. So there's quite a few things that are changing, aren't there? And the construction industry needs to be working alongside that change as well to make sure that they're effective.
For sure. I think businesses need to start to realize as well that they kind of have a responsibility to be
Yeah,
improving quality of life in general.
yeah,
And they're kind of they've got their vested partners in delivering this. I think generations as well are start as consumers are starting to demand that you know, they're going to interact with services in a different way. One book I was reading, Homo Deus, really obviously it blew my mind, and some of the stuff I can't was still trying to get my head around, but he was talking about he couldn't see the sense in the fact he owns a private car, but he drives it to work. It takes him 28 minutes and then it sits idle for however long he's
yeah,
at work. Then he only drives it for another 28 minutes. And he thinks when stuff starts getting more augmented in terms of AI and all that kind of stuff, I don't want to take up too much bandwidth with this, but it says, you know, people will
no,
be
it's
using
interesting.
shared vehicles, and people will be using, and that's actually a trend which we're seeing in younger generations. They don't, why
But
have an asset that you
yeah,
can't use
we've
all the time?
we've had it introduced and it's gone away though. We had a number of those where people were using smart cars and things in urban environments,
Mm,
and they came and they went. They weren't that
yeah.
successful. And I think the problem is we like ownership and
Mm,
having something that's ours.
yeah.
It's like our homes. We wouldn't share our homes predominantly. But with a car, they see that as that's mine. I don't really want someone else to have it. It's people's perception. I think people may change, but they aren't quite resistant to change, aren't they? Some people.
Yeah. Um, that his way of connecting the dots on that was that the connectivity of it all was important through automation and artificial intelligence. That
Yeah,
actually there were all these cars in a system, in a pool system. It knew that you would need a car at that specific time. It would be there. It would pick you up in the south. This is a whole utopian world we're
yeah,
talking about here. It would pick you up because it's autonomous and take you where you needed to go. You would be in, and then it would go off and it would do its next sort of it would do its next round. There's another
yeah,
book I just want to quickly drop in there while we're on this kind of subject of, you know, being, you know, more sustainable and that kind of thing, is that I read a book called The Nature Fix.
yeah,
Now, she had a case study example about the government of Singapore. Now, they're marketing Singapore as a city in a garden.
yeah,
One of the things that their urban planners have really, really focused on is they're developing residential spaces, but the maximum that a person can be away from accessing to green space is 400 meters. That's
yeah,
really, really revolutionary, and it's in a country that's really strapped for space and is very densely populated. So it's really interesting that I think the number she quoted was they were already at 87%.
Yeah,
So you know
but
what?
I've never been myself, but looking at some of the images of what they're doing, and they're doing it very differently. So they've got vertical gardens, they've got all sorts of things going on, haven't they?
Yeah.
To create those green spaces.
Yeah, for sure. I think some people on the call who are a bit savvy, they'll probably if this was like a dialogue with an audience or something, they'd probably come back to me and say, well, Singapore is kind of almost a quasi dictatorship because freedom of press and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But talk to a Singaporean or two, ask them if they feel safe, ask them if they've got the resources and the infrastructure that they really, really value, and 9 times out of 10 they probably will say yes. We have a safe society. We really value our services. Yeah. And we don't talk trash about people. So how, freedom of speech is fine, but we don't go around talking trash about people or saying things we shouldn't be saying.
No, that's right. But do you remember that when they were famous for outlawing chewing gum? Yeah, that's quite a long while ago now. So they made it against the law to even own or use chewing gum because they were spending so much time lifting it off the streets, weren't they? So that became now outlawed completely, and still is to today, isn't it? So they became famous for that. But again, you walk down the street, and it wouldn't be nice if if it was never invented in the first place. Chewing gum, it would be very good in some respects.
Yeah, there are other ways that we can kind of what chewing gum kind of does, and if we go down the rabbit hole with it as well, isn't it supposed to have plastic particles in it as well?
Yeah, there's all sorts of strange things now. I remember when they were starting to put micro pieces of plastic into things, and it was a good thing. It was helping you cleanse your skin. It was helping you do these things, and then we start to think about the buildup of it inside the earth in different areas in the water and the food supply, and it's everywhere now, isn't it? And that's one of the challenges, isn't it? Whatever we introduce, will eventually get everywhere. Because it gets into all our systems, and it's a challenge, isn't it? Anything we do.
Yeah, and this is a real sort of wormhole that we've kind of gone down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, sure. We need to come back then. So, are you still at Kia now? Are you or?
No. I'll bring us back on track, but I think we might have killed our opportunity for sponsorship from like a chewing gum brand or something like that.
Definitely. And in fact, I wouldn't want to be sponsored by a chewing gum brand.
Well, there's the ethics as well, Leo, as well. So that's at least we're okay with that kind of stuff. Anyway, we were at Kia, but at Kia, unfortunately, my role was made redundant after being there for just over 4 years. But it was great to kind of work with that team and in that industry. Won a couple of awards there, which is really fantastic as well. Not just for our developments, but just for me personally. So I was really, really pleased to be able to have that professional development. After a really short search, I took up employment with West Midlands Combined Authority, and for 2 years working at basically the regional governmental arm that's delivering real change and difference for individuals and societies right across the West Midlands. Was because I'm not there anymore. Was a really, really rewarding experience. I was working in their communications team. I predominantly focused on internal communications and worked with a great bunch of supportive colleagues. And we did some really, really great sort of campaign work in internal space. I learned a lot. I learned a lot working in that political space as well, where we're geared towards political targets as well, and you need to be quite mindful of a different sort of environment. It was also a really great learning experience because you were seeing things from very many different perspectives, and you were able to you had to manage those because sometimes inevitably it causes conflict, but other times you can see the synergies and the collaborations. And in the end, they were a collection of people that were just trying to make, a real positive difference in our part of the world. So, there's a lot of respect for the people, even if there are people out there from West Midlands Combined Authority. There's a lot of respect for what these people do day in, day out. Fantastic 2 years with some great colleagues in the marketing communications team there. I had an opportunity to grow again and to move into a new sector, and that was with my current employer, which is Arcadis Gen, totally different sector again in the digital space, and I'm in total awe of people who work in the digital space. My younger brother is a software developer, and the minds that they have, the things that they can do, I'm just so, because I've tried to live in that space. I tried to do coding and all that kind of stuff. I just could not get
Yeah,
JavaScript to
the
stick.
type of coding I used to do, because I've been in technology since 1980. I started in flight simulation with the Royal Air Force, and I'm a Coral and Fortran programmer, which there is just no work for anymore because no one ever does any coding in Coral and Fortran anymore. But back then in the 80s, it was quite a live language and what people did then, and it's just changed the way things do. And I think also looking at it from my perspective, the actual industry's changed dramatically in the way that they actually deliver as well, because normal software development and the structure of it back in the 80s and 90s, you would be looking at 6 months to 12 months for each release cycle, and it was one big release of something. Whereas you look at people like Netflix now, they use an agile development process, and they reckon on average they do a release something like 14 times a day. So they're releasing very small changes very, very quickly and very repeatedly. So things are moving forward very, very rapidly because of the way they've adopted it. And it's not just the process they're following, agile from a development perspective. It's the infrastructure they utilize as well, allows them to be able to do that. So these more modern type infrastructures and services, some of the we call these microservices, allows them to do things very differently to how it used to be done.
I mean, the key words, the flexibility, agility
Yeah.
of the space as well, because I think that it's a collaborative working environment to work in.
Yeah.
The code probably exists somewhere, so they can reach out to other people and they can find that stuff. And it's just such an exciting sort of area to be working in. Arcadis Gen specializes in developing digital solutions, so app-based solutions for partners within the natural environment, built environment, within transport and infrastructure, major transport and infrastructure partners, and utility partners as well, to help them kind of maximize the power of their data and to help them to understand and then deliver efficiencies to generally make the world a more efficient and sustainable place. So they're kind of targeting the spaces of just giving them a little bit of plug out there.
Nothing wrong with that, is there?
Just because, I mean, as a communicator, these things are just in my DNA, so I kind of almost can't help it in a way. And they work, majority of their target markets are in the US, the UK, and Europe. And they are part of they're kind of Arcadis Gen are a subset. Well, I don't even think that's the right sort of word, but Arcadis, I don't know if you know them. They're a major built natural environment consultancy company, and they're in over 70 countries around the world. So they're a key investor partner of Arcadis Gen. And yeah, so I was working with them in internal communications and engagement. So trying to help to work with our internal stakeholder partners and our community internally in terms of engagement and awareness and understanding of what we're doing and our shared purpose, and growing and developing that. Now that leads me obviously to what is the next chapter of my career, so to speak, not my life but my career, because my role with Arcadis Gen was recently made redundant. So I'm just winding down the final weeks of that contract. And I've worked with some absolutely fantastic people there too, and I've learned a lot from some great leaders.
So what you're looking for, what the challenges you're looking for, and is there any perfect organization for you out there?
I think that would be a very pigeonholing question. I think to develop and demonstrate a growth mindset, I think we should be open, embracing opportunities. And I've loved working with a diverse group of people across many geographies, because Arcadis Gen is, I think, on 9 continents. Our colleagues are, which span are on 9 countries, 4 continents. So to have access to that diversity of minds and thinkings and way of living is really, really quite exciting for someone who is a traveler. That's something that's just, I mean, I think you either have the wanderlust gene or you don't. I definitely do have the wanderlust gene. It exists. And that's just a really sort of powerful thing for me. So I'm sort of sector agnostic, but I'm really, really, open to embracing.
Will it be a more of a communications role again that you're looking for to stay with, your current experience and things, or are you looking to diversify in the role that you take as well?
So comms is an exciting space to be in, because I think you need to help individuals to understand the real power of delivering an excellent message to key stakeholders in your audiences, and helping them to understand that actually you need to be audience and to coin a phrase from design and from technology, user centric. Well, you need to be audience centric with your messaging as well. But conversely, I'm really excited about the marketing space as well, and brand, because I think internal communications has seen the most radical shifts in the way that it needs to kind of modernize, in terms of it needs to be more like marketing. Social media has changed the landscape of marketing communications irrevocably. I mean, it's irrecognizable, and it's kind of also meant that people's ability to tune into messages is shorter and shorter. So I value people who are still on this live stream now at 32 minutes. But I think social media has changed the way that we need to work and flex as communication and marketing sort of individuals and professionals. But those are the spaces I'm kind of looking at, and the sectors I'm kind of, but let's be open about them for sure, because I get a chance to learn as well.
Yeah, and I think you also have to consider, that those social media environments appeal to different age groups. Like you speak to any young people, Facebook is like old hat. You're an old person if you're doing Facebook. They're all on TikTok or Snapchat, or there are alternative mediums that they're utilizing to do it. And it's all, it's like music or video related piece, but like you say, very short pieces, that they're doing. But I think a lot of people's span, concentration span is quite small. I can spend a long time looking at something and absorbing information from it, and I don't have a problem as long as it's interesting. And that's the key thing, keeping it interesting as you go through it. But the mediums, there are so many mediums nowadays that to follow. I don't know about yourself. I absorb a lot of news and things through Flipbook. If you've seen Flipbook, it's it pulls in from lots of different websites and streams of information. So I use that as my go-to, find out what's happening in the world type of thing. I remember the old days of messaging and things. There's IMDb and also strange messaging mechanisms. AOL Messenger many years ago when people were doing dial-up and things, and it's changed dramatically. Because I remember my early days of working with the internet, we were looking at Gopher servers, and we were using Janets and Jugheads to search for data in effectively list managers. That's what a Gopher was. It was a list manager, and it was a menu-driven interface before we had this wonderful World Wide Web that's only been around since '92, and people seem to think it's been around longer than that, but it hasn't. That's when the HTML coding mechanism came along, and the ability to create web servers that would serve using that technology. It's not been around that long.
No.
I remember using.
Understand.
That's it. Spyglass Mosaic, 16 color. So I've been looking at a picture in 16 color. It's quite different, but I remember doing that on Windows 3 back in, what would that have been? Maybe 98, 99. Quite a different world, to what we have today. It's real, and also the devices we use. If you look at majority of people today, they consume majority information through smart devices, tablets and smartphones. It's not using a computer much nowadays, and especially youngsters. Most of them, it's through a smart device like a phone, and that does everything. So then it changes your perception of content, and also the type of content, how you can deliver it, because you've got to make sure it fits into this small device's capabilities.
Yeah, and you've got kids that are coming into the world now. Their first instinct is to interact with a screen now by touching it as well. So it's like,
that's right.
And they will know no different for sure. You've just got to roll with it. I think to coin a phrase, I mean, life's some assembly is required,
Yeah.
but you've got to be willing to kind of, the manual's not there. You can't Google this, but build and pivot and iterate where you can, and just be open to growth, open to opportunities, and be open to new experiences.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So you're looking out for a new role. If anybody's interested in giving Manny an opportunity, drop him a line. We've had Manny's LinkedIn profile up, and we've got it again there. So anybody who's interested in discussing, potentials, or if you've got an idea of something you want to achieve and you're not sure how to do it, and you're looking for somebody who's skilled in that communications aspect, especially through digital mediums, Manny's your man. As it were. So make sure you reach out. We've had a few other little messages on the screen as we've been going along. So one thing is we're always looking for people to join us. We've got John Andrews and Neil Jinks with us next week on Tuesday and Thursday. We've also got some more later on. So we've got plans through February. We've also got spaces in March if anybody's wanted to come along and, brand themselves, talk about what they do for a living and promote their business. We're happy to have everybody on to join us. I did set you up with a couple of questions before we started, didn't I, Manny? So the first one was, what's the best meal you've ever had and why and where was it? So, give us that one first.
Do you know what? This is just really, really, really difficult to kind of answer because there have been so many. From an individual who's been so lucky to have done quite extensive amount of traveling as well. It's really, I blog about it. I blog about my solo travel experiences. So I'm constantly being a foodie. It's a thing. And you can read the blogs on the YouTube profile. I've kind of started.
There must be something that's towards the summit, isn't there? Of the experience.
When you asked me the question while we were preparing to come online, I thought instantly about it was pad thai in Bangkok, and I went to this hawker center, just random sort of hawker center where a lot of the locals kind of go. People if they're out on lunch for from their businesses, they were all in there, and that's the kind of authentic experience I always look for. I don't.
You know the history of pad thai, do you?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, because it's not been around very long. And it was because they had a very low yield of rice one year, and the way of it making it expand out, getting that rice to feed more people was turn it into rice noodles. And then they created, like the government actually created this recipe for pad thai to introduce people to using noodles rather than other things they would normally do to effectively pad out meals to make sure everybody could eat. Yeah, so it's quite interesting that it's not been around that long, and and it was linked to a level of famine that they were having at the time. And I think there's quite a lot of stories like that about particular things that people have done because of the need at the time, isn't there?
Food history is really, really quite something you can really kind of just sink your teeth into, and how food's migrated, it's adapted, and then it's come back to where it originated from in a totally different form. But to kind of round up that story, you were pretty sure this woman, she was probably in her 80s, and she'd been making pad thai for a significant period of her life. And when you're doing something for so long, you really develop an element of expertise for it. This cost less than £1. It was about 80 pence, and it was just And actually, I'm reminiscing now. I'm salivating just thinking about it.
Have you been to Japan much?
So from my LinkedIn profile, if people dig deeply enough, they will know that I speak Japanese. I actually count it as my second language, which is absolutely horrifying because of my heritage. It should really be Punjabi, but because I'm so my Japanese is so proficient. He says proficient. I'm not fluent. I'm at an intermediate level. But don't put me on the spot to speak any, because I'll be really embarrassed.
I don't speak Japanese. I've never been in my life, but I'm very interested in Japanese culture and especially the food side of things. So when you were talking about That's now they've spent so much time perfecting to make pad thai. That's very much like Japanese, isn't it, in food?
Mhm.
They always want to keep perfecting, getting the best and the best they can be at whatever they do.
Mhm.
Some of the izakais, is it
Izakaya.
pronouncing izakaya,
Izakaya.
they just like focus on a certain set of meals, and they really try and get the best they can, but
They
also
make
the
money.
experience as well.
Yeah, and they make money.
Yeah,
They make money. I mean, they have lots of amazing concepts, and this is why I'm so interested in. Um, we could be on here for a lot longer if we
I
start
know.
talking about this
I think we may
subject.
have to stop in a
So
second, because
I don't
I
know
think
if I
we're
can
both
go
talking
down.
about areas we find very interesting, but I
Yep,
don't
I
know
don't know
whether
if we can go
anybody else
down it.
does.
I don't know if we can go down this rabbit hole. I really think I need
No,
to
but
stop.
it is interesting, like I say, certain cultures, how they really want to work and work and work to improve and improve and improve. And it's not about the money a lot of times. It's about being the best you can be at whatever you do. And it's not always food, it's lots of other things, isn't it? And it's focusing to be the best person that you can be doing whatever you've decided to do, whether that's woodworking,
Mm.
whatever. It doesn't matter. They want to be the best, which is it was quite interesting. So the other question I did ask you earlier, and just to prime you, was what's the most adventurous thing you've ever done?
This is a really, really weird thing for an introvert as well, because there are a lot of things I'm very risk averse about. But when I've been on my travels, I've done some stuff that I probably really, shouldn't have done because it's risky, like bungee jumping. I love bungee jumping so much. I did it twice.
It's not
Um,
the kind of thing I would choose to do myself.
Yeah, but it's so much fun. And I would do it again in a heartbeat. Canyoning's really, really
Oh
risky,
yeah,
really, and it's actually, it is terrifying. But I'd do it again. I
yeah.
canyoned down a 40 meter waterfall in Costa Rica.
That's a long way.
Yeah, whitewater rafting as well in
Yeah,
New
we had
Zealand.
someone on. I think it was
Yeah,
earlier this week had done whitewater rafting as well, and they said
yeah.
it was an amazing experience.
I
Doing that.
recommend it. The one I did in New Zealand was down the highest commercially rafted waterfall in the world.
Yeah,
So, long story short, the whole raft, when it went off this waterfall, which was just shy of 8 meters, it disappeared because they take pictures of you as you're going in, and then there's this
yeah,
picture. There's no raft, just the
yeah.
splash.
Gone.
Yeah.
Well, it's been great having you on today. Is there anything you'd like to say for any potential employers who might be looking out for some of your skills? Anything you'd like to say? A quick few words.
Just generally anybody who's out there and watching this live stream, it's been great to be here with you, and I'm really, really grateful for the opportunity from both Rachel and yourself, Lee. I mean, this has been absolutely fun. So if you're thinking about
Good.
doing something like this, it's a blast. But I think I just want to leave a couple of people with two quotes I always love to throw out. I use them all the time. The first one's from Lemony Snicket is, "If we wait until we are ready, we'll be waiting for the rest of our lives."
Yeah.
So just kind of do it. I'm saying, and the second one is I guess this one's good for farewells or moving on to other things. It's from the sci-fi writer Frank Herbert. So he
Yeah.
wrote Dune. You probably know.
Yeah.
He says there is no real ending. There's just a place where you leave the story.
Yeah.
So
Very true.
yeah.
Very good. Very good. Well, thanks ever so much for joining. If you can stay on afterwards, so we can have a quick chat and talk through how things have gone. We're going to shut things down now because we've come up to 45 minutes, which is a little bit longer than we normally do. We have been up to the hour, but it's sometimes I've had to slow people down. I could get a crook, but the trouble is having a virtual crook to pull people off the screen is quite a challenge these days. But thanks ever so much for joining us today. It's been great listening to your story. Yeah, I wish you the best of luck going forward, and hope you find something that's really challenging and give you something that you really can get your teeth into. I also hope you continue with your travels, because it sounds like you're very passionate about it and enjoy doing it, which if I was a bit younger I might try myself, but I'm getting on a bit and I've got too many other commitments to be able to travel too much. It'd be very pleasant if I didn't. So, but thanks ever so much. And like I say, everybody, if you want to join us again, we've got two next week. We've got John John Andrews, and we've got Neil Jinks next Tuesday, next Thursday. So join us for that as well. But also, if you're interested in joining us, you can see Rachel and my details at the bottom. Drop us an email. We can organise you a slot. And you've seen what we do. It's just a fireside chat, just a gentle talk through your meanderings of life, and then hopefully you can present yourself and also your business through that mechanism as well. But thanks ever so much, everybody, and I'll catch you all soon. Thank you.
Cheers, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.